shifting back to Afghanistan, when did the withdrawal first hit your radar? I mean, the withdrawal is not something that just happened in 2021. It's talked about for a long time. When did that first hit your radar that our country was thinking about withdrawing from Afghanistan?
It first became really clear to me in January of 2010 that we wanted to reconcile and that we were going to at least give some sort of shared ownership of the government to the Taliban. And I always thought that was so we could withdraw. So yeah.
2010.
Yes.
Wow. Halfway through the 20-year war.
Yeah. So the writing was on the wall for me then that was going to happen, and that the Taliban, I thought the Taliban would have a large share of the government, like 40 to 60%, which I didn't agree with, but I didn't realize it would obviously turn out the way it did.
Was this President Obama's view on, did he feel like that was the way to peace?
Yeah, he actually had chosen a special representative at the time. He's passed away now, Richard Holbrooke. And that was their goal. That this Taliban reconciliation was going to be the future. It was going to be the way out. And it was going to be, it was planned to be with the Taliban.
This is before bin Laden.
Yes.
So, I mean, essentially for me,
like a
the
year
war on terror,
before.
the war on terror, any president could have probably took the trophy and said, hey, war on terror is over, we win. But they didn't, including President Trump. He should have, in my opinion, he should have declared the war on terror over. And we could have kept the presence there and represent the international community, participated with the international community there. But I believe we should have declared the war on terror a victory, especially after bin Laden was killed. So essentially, we're talking since 2010 to surrender Afghanistan to our enemy, the Taliban. You said you have my book, Saving Z's. I've been very outspoken on the withdrawal and my disagreements with it. For me, I believe that we should have never left Afghanistan. You may or may not agree with me. I believe that we should have left a small contingency there in the most strategic place in the globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China, and led the international community to support the Afghan National Army, support and advise the Afghan National Army, support and advise the Afghan National Police to keep the Taliban at bay in those mountains of Afghanistan. So to withdraw for me was, I believe there was a disingenuous lie to the American people that we were leaving a war of 20 years when we still have 80,000 troops in Japan and 40,000 troops in Germany and 35,000 troops in South Korea. Like, those don't keep us in wars. They prevent wars to have those contingencies. So that's my personal opinion on that. But so as I was looking at this about June, I started going on Fox, June 2021, before the withdrawal. I started going on Fox and I was trying to really assess, I didn't want to speak out of my frustration as a veteran. I did 8 deployments to Afghanistan. My son deployed to Afghanistan. I lost friends there. I didn't want to speak out of my frustration for the withdrawal. I just really want to, from an investigative standpoint, why would we leave? There's got to be a motivation at why we're leaving so hastily. And the only conclusion I came to, and I said this, like I said, as early as June of 2021, is that the only benefactor of us leaving was China. There's 3 things that China will benefit from. One is the mineral rights to the Hindu Kush Mountains that they wanted. 2 would be to move sanctioned oil from Iran to China. And 3rd was to have the most strategic place in the globe, Bagram Air Base, between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. I believe all 3 of those have came true. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think that's who benefited.
Yeah.
I really think the U.S., how all of our jobs work in the U.S., someone sits in a job for a year or 2 and they rotate. We don't really think in long-term strategic plans, right? China does, right? They can make a 100-year plan.
Yeah.
We have, hey, I'm out of this job in 6 months. I need to do X in 6 months to get promoted, right? And then the new guy comes in and completely changes it, right? So we don't do strategic planning, I think, at all. I don't think we even thought through what China was going to gain from it, honestly.
Right. So you think it's just coincidental that they benefit in those things?
Well, remember, so China and Taliban, they actually had the relationship in 2010. Okay. Back when I worked it. So China has always fostered this relationship with the Taliban, preparing for the day we leave, right?
Because they're thinking long term.
And so we then should have prepared for what China was going to do with Afghanistan, and we were the ones not prepared. China was well on the path when the withdrawal happened. They were ready. They knew the contracts they wanted to, pull. They were ready to move because they planned for it.
So instead of willful intent, you just say gross incompetence of lack of preparing or understanding.
Well, everything was gross incompetence. Remember, they waited till August to even talk about how they're going to do a withdrawal,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, it was really gross incompetence, at least in the way the withdrawal happened. Now, after that, you've had 3 years and it's still this way, there is, some major negligence going on.
Yeah.
There's support to terrorism going on. There's sanctions violations by our government going on. There's actual crimes we're committing now in Afghanistan.
We say crimes that we're committing, crimes that our
government's committing.
Yeah. I want to talk about some of those. One of the things that's happened recently is, and I was just on Fox News this week about it, is the plea deal the plea deal for the masterminds. Sheikh Mohammed, us giving a plea deal to the masterminds of 9/11, three of them, and then one of the things I said on the news was like, if President Biden doesn't agree with it, then he needs to stand up, not hide behind his press secretary, and condemn it and retract it. And thankfully, Secretary Austin did.
Right.
But why do you think that it was even a factor in the first place? And
so I want to say like 5 or 6 months ago, this was really coming up as, hey, this plea deal is coming out, and everyone was getting pretty nervous about it. And really the game the lawyers were playing is, well, there's multiple problems. One is, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was like waterboarded, and a jury's going to have a problem with that. Another one they said is, well, some of the information linking him to 9/11 or at least capturing him are classified. Will we get that information released to charge him? Like they came up with all these excuses, right? And instead of the fact, hey, he didn't just kill, up to 3,000 people on 9/11, right? 4,000 more people died of cancers and ground zero injuries after. We had him behead Danny Pearl, right? He was involved in the Bali bombings, Mombasa attacks, right? Like,
push us into 20 years of war.
Yeah, there is no plea, right?
Yeah.
But it was like lawyers doing lawyer crap. And, years ago when I was on the Benghazi committee, our kind of like chief legal, he had worked on the Fort Hood shooting.
Right.
And if you remember when the Fort Hood shooting first happened, they didn't do it as terrorism right away because it was easier to do it as something else. They legally made the decision, we're going to charge it this way because it's easier to put it through the court case this way. And then, as you know, the families didn't get the benefits. It had to be reversed and charged a different way. So it's almost like the lawyers being lazy instead of doing what was morally correct for the country.
Yeah. You talked about the United States doing actual crimes. Like, right now, one of the things that I've been just hot on, I know you and I both are friends with Sean. We talked about it several times today, but Sean and I have been trying to shed light on U.S. taxpayer dollars literally funding terrorism, and which is just so disturbing to me. And so before we get back in Afghanistan with that, I just want to touch on Iran, because we have been giving money continuously to Iran for years. Is the money that U.S. taxpayer dollars that the White House is sending to Iran, is that making its hands in the Hamas and the terrorist attacks?
Yeah, the really thing I like to tell people, at least with the Iranian dollars, because they're like, well, show me the dollar moving from the government to the terrorists. It's like, no, when you infuse a government with billions of dollars, it opens up the other cash reserves so they can better fund Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, et cetera.
It's just business, right? You can reallocate money.
Yeah, they have more money. And that's the part that people get lost on, right? They want you to see the dollar bill moving. And it's like, come on, guys, like be practical. All these groups have grown. Their capabilities have grown. Their access to weapons have grown. And it's because Iran had billions of dollars from our government, and it's an appeasement thing we do because of the nuclear program, instead of just ending the nuclear program so we don't have to give them any money, which is what we should do, because we're forcing the people of Iran to live under this regime because we give them so much money that people could never counter that, right? You could not come up with a resistance or rebellion in Iran that can get against a $1 billion machine backed by the West. I mean, we're basically impacting the people of Iran by supporting the regime.
What does America get out of it?
They feel that they're stopping the creation of a nuclear weapon.
But we have the ability to shut down a nuclear program.
I mean, I feel we should just sabotage and destroy it and make sure it never happens.
Yeah.
Instead of every few months they get a little farther along. Are you joking?
Yeah.
It's like a bad movie.
It is a bad movie. It's a terrible
We're like
movie.
America. Who forgot that part?
Yeah, exactly. Like we could, no, you're not building a nuclear weapon.
Exactly.
Yeah.